Okay, it's 12:30, so we'll get started. So I guess I'd just like to open the meeting of the Audit and Risk Committee of the Coorong District Council. Just a reminder for everyone in attendance that the meeting is being recorded. Firstly, I'll just quickly go through the civic affirmation. We gather today to duly and faithfully carry out our duties to the best of our judgment and ability, for the advancement of this district and the benefit of all of our community and fellow citizens. And the acknowledgement of country. Coorong District Council Audit and Risk Committee members acknowledge and pay respect to the traditional custodians of the land and waters, the Ngarrindjeri people whose ancestral lands on which we meet today. We acknowledge the deep feelings of attachment and relationship of Aboriginal people to country and pay our respects to elders past and present. We also extend that respect to all First Nation people. So officially welcome to everyone, both councillors, staff in attendance as well. I think we have everyone present with no apologies. Is that correct? Yep. Now, just before we head through the agenda, I just wonder if I can get a show of hands, if it is okay. We have the external auditors here in regards to item 10 and 13 on the agenda. So if I can just get a show of hands, if it is all right to bring those two items to be first on the agenda following confirmation of the minutes. Thank you. Okay, so we'll go forward with that. So before we do anything else, just in regards to the confirmation of the minutes from the Audit and Risk Committee meeting held 8th of June, does anyone have any questions or comments in regards to the confirmation of the minutes? So would someone like to put that motion forward? Councillor Hill, seconded. Councillor Bland, thank you. All those in favour? And thank you, that's carried. Okay, so rather than item 5, we'll duck straight into item 10 of the agenda. So item 10 of the agenda, which is on page 10, is the auditor management letter and response. Just to tell you, the recommendation on the table is that the auditor management letter and response report and recommendation. Oh, got the wrong one. I've still got the old one circulated. What's the new recommendation on that one? Sorry, because I've only got the. I did read it, but I don't think I've got it in my documentation. The new recommendation. Is it on the screen? Okay, so sorry. So we have here the audit management letter and response. That the Audit and Risk Committee receive and endorse the audit management letter and response as attached. So before we get on to that, I guess, is there an officer that wishes to speak to it? And then I will ask for David Papper's response from the external auditor perspective.
There's no comment. David Papper's is quite happy to.
Okay. All right. So David, would you want to talk to the audit response and management letter?
Sure, thanks, Chair. I'll go over some of the points in our management letter at a high level, but I'm certainly happy if the committee wishes to expand on any of the points that we raise. Our approach is a risk-based approach. I think it's always important to reiterate that. So we look at the beginning of the year what we believe are the risk areas relating to the council based on our knowledge of Coorong District Council and also the local government sector as a whole. And we formulate our plan and our approach. So we don't look at everything financially, but we do look at what we believe are the risky areas to get assurance, to provide you assurance when recommending the accounts for signing by council. Our audit this year has identified 3 new matters. The 3 new matters are internal, well, there are 2 internal control, 1 financial statement. I guess the key point to raise is none of them are material in nature. So whether it's the internal controls opinion or the financial statement opinion, both of them will be an unmodified audit report. So the matters that we're raising are for your internal benefit, housekeeping for lack of a better way of explaining it. because we just want to be able to provide that bit of proactive feedback. So in regards to the purchase order matter, there was an instance where we saw effectively the order of approval the wrong way around. From our testing and our sample pool, it was an isolated occurrence, but it's certainly there for something to take note of. And we're happy with management's response that they'll be looking into the control matter to tighten up in due course. In regards to issue 2, the review of exempt properties are always a bit of a risk area for local government. Effectively, we have seen in the past where exempt properties aren't looked at for quite an extensive period of time, and there's literally money left on the table, or you're giving away free money. That's the risk that we're trying to bring to the surface. And again, very rarely is it material, but it is certainly something that needs to be looked at. And again, happy that that will be looked at in the upcoming year as well. The third matter that we've raised for our final management letter is just in regards to developing an understanding on the quarry landfill rehabilitation provision. It's been quite a while since there's been a movement. Generally, these types of provisions do have a bit of movement in them, which indicates that there needs to be a conscious thought put to it. Again, it's going to be done in due course, and we're happy with that because it's not a significant or material number unless there's some sort of adversity that has been brought to our attention. So that were the current issues. The only other matter I will really focus on, I'll probably bring our prior points raised, I'll bring 1 and 3 in together, which is asset revaluations and also the financial sustainability, because there is an inherent connection between the two. I guess, bringing to the committee's attention, and I guess in due course, the council's attention, the importance of regular reoccurring revaluations is critical in understanding the council's assets. Asset management planning is based on these revaluations. Condition assessments that come out of these revaluations are quite critical in making sure that you've got accurate and current data for your IAMPs and also your long-term financial plan, which is where the connection through to the future and financial sustainability component comes in our prior points raised being number 3. So I really just want to highlight the importance of getting these revaluations done and as accurate as possible so you can have quality asset planning and you can understand any financial obligations that come with your sustainable assets moving forwards. The only other matter that we've got raised in our management letters in regards to leave, it seems to be a regular reoccurring issue where there are high amounts of leave being accrued by personnel. Other than the financial impact, there is a work health and safety consideration that needs to be made there, because if people don't get the time to rest and recover, they can make errors. And given that you've got staff that are in the field, that can become quite an issue from a work health safety perspective. So that's the big reason why we want to raise that point as well. So that's a synopsis of our report. Certainly happy, Michelle, if the committee want to discuss any of the points in detail.
Any questions from members for the auditor? Sorry, Councillor Roundtree, yep.
Thank you. So with regards to the asset revaluation and notwithstanding the response from management, I just want to be clear, so would not revaluating the land and buildings have a positive or negative effect on the long-term financial plan and annual business plan? And in particular, would it give a false impression of the council's position in those years with the fact that it wasn't done? So what did it actually do? And what did it cause to happen during that time?
So by not revaluing over that period of time, the impact would be you're basing all of your decisions on old asset data. So the risk is if a condition assessment, very crudely, if a stretch of road was deemed to have a 100-year life, and that was at the engineering stage, and 30 years in, the road is either significantly deteriorated or in a more advanced state than planned, the risk is you're inappropriately provisioning for that. So your depreciation could be wrong because you may be depreciating it too quick or too slow. And that could also have implications on your asset renewal cycle. So when you take back on a sealed road, when you take back the seal, you may take back the seal too early or too late. And if it's too late, your cost of remediation could be far more than it could be or should be. That's if you remediate the road too late. And if it's too early, there's still useful life on the asset that you're disposing in advance of what the opportunity is. So it really comes down to your depreciation is a component, and certainly the financial statement component that we look at, but functionally either repairing an asset too early or too late is the impact, and that has an actual dollar cost by either being too deteriorated and needing more work, or you're writing off an asset too early. That's really the big implications that come from inaccurate condition assessment.
So thank you for that. So in a financial plan for those years, it would make your financial position look better than what it was?
It's hard to know because it depends on what side of the equation the condition assessment would land. So without going into the depths of your engineering and the lifespan that was identified for the asset, and if we look back, I'm just thinking there was one of them that was in 2010. I'm just going to check what category that was. So we've got, for example, other structures, whatever that may be, I guess. Well, let's just take buildings, which is now 7 years old. 7 years ago, the condition of the buildings may have had a useful life of 30 years. If it's now, as at today, due to the wear and tear of the building or, different review of the composition of the structure, it's identified that it's only got another 20 years left. You need to change your depreciation, your provisioning. On the flip side, it could be 40 rather than 30, in which case you've got a longer life of the asset. So I can't say if it's going to cost more or cost less. It really comes down to the condition assessment as at today, but that's what puts the importance on that regular condition assessment to make sure that you are making the right decision. In this example, is it 20, 30 or 40 years that we've got left in that building?
So it's useful for budgeting purposes, really, to know where you're allocating your funds.
Budgeting from an asset management perspective, a remediation and renewal perspective, and then obviously, yes, agreed, your long-term financial plan has a big reliance on the asset data in its accuracy.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry, before Councillor Taylor's question, can I just add for Councillor Roundtree, we set rates based on depreciation numbers as well. And so having quite drastic changes in asset valuations often suddenly bring about things we didn't know about. And so then we require more extreme rate determination. So the more often that we are revaluing, the less likely we are to have those big hikes in rates if there is an issue. And we can also capture if we're charging too much, given that depreciation is such a large component. It allows us to therefore plan well in the long-term financial plan as well and have your accurate asset management plan. So it really is important that we get those valuations done.
Thank you.
Councillor Taylor, you had a question?
Thank you, Chair. For page 11, where we've got financial sustainability, was the report based on the previous long-term financial plan? And did the auditor have an opportunity to review the draft long-term financial plan? Clearly, the management's response shows that the new long-term financial plan is now currently before the council, but I just wondered if they were basing this on the previous one or a draft of the current one.
Yeah, our point is a carry forward point of the former, and until the long-term financial plan is approved, in my world, it's not approved. Whilst I respect and appreciate there is a draft and you've got some serious consideration to this draft, until it is the driving document, we're still basing our comments on what is your live long-term financial plan.
Thank you.
Okay, any more questions? Okay, and just generally, David, how did the external audit go with staff?
Yeah, there were challenges, as you no doubt are aware, and obviously staff changing during the year always creates a bit of complexity in the audit and the audit process. But in all real terms, the effort and dedication to the cause in getting everything as complete as possible was certainly there. So it had a few bumps, but I think we worked together quite well, especially with James and our respective teams. Obviously, we got the job done, albeit a little bit close to the one, but we did get the job done, and there was nothing of grave concern, to be honest.
Okay. And just to remind members that this is the final year of the current contract with Bentley's. So I guess we'll take the opportunity to thank David and Bentley's for the audit. And I've only been here for the last couple, but I must say that every time I do work with Bentley's, they do provide it that extra level of, you know, assistance to councils, and they're very robust in their audits. So thank you very much for the last few years in regards to the audit.
Thank you.
So we do have a recommendation. If someone would like to move that the Audit and Risk Committee receive and endorse the audit management letter and responses attached. Thank you, Councillor Roundtree, seconded by Councillor Bland. All those in favour? And thank you, that's carried. So just continuing so that David can leave, we are going to item 13, which is page 14 of the agenda, which is the audited financial statements for the year ending 30th of June 2021. The recommendation here is a bit more detailed in regards to, we firstly receive a note of the statements, and we recommend that they be formally adopted by the council, on behalf of council by the Mayor and the CEO. We will also communicate to the CEO to communicate council's approval of the financial statements, and will authorise myself to sign off on the certification of auditor independence. Does any officer want to speak to the statements?
Through you, Chair. The Finance Committee, these reports have also been to the Finance Committee,
Okay.
and all members who are currently on this committee have been privy to them.
Okay.
Through that mechanism.
All right, which is good, makes our life easier. Councillor Roundtree, do you have a question?
I'm happy to move the recommendation.
Okay, let me go through mine, because I am the one member that hasn't seen them other than in this agenda. Just a quick question, page 18, plant and equipment, there is a minus number in regards to the depreciation on that. I was just wondering what that was in regard to.
James.
That was in regard to applying a residual value of 20% on plant that wasn't applied before. I understand it probably should have been reflected as a revaluation, but we credited it against the depreciation expense.
I guess from David, from your point of view, is it more that it's not material?
Correct. Yeah.
That's why the treatment's
trivial.
okay.
Yeah, it's trivial. Correct.
Okay. I guess the thing I did bring up also was the idea of, yes, the very late, very old valuation dates. And I will discuss that when we talk about the audit committee's program going forward for the remaining part of the year. We might talk about if we can get some reports back and valuations for that. I did note on page 38 in commitments for expenditure. Now you do choose to show other expenditure commitments. My understanding on the note, the model financial statements, is you need to do commitments for capital, but you do not need to do commitments for other expenditure, and you have chosen to. But I do notice that the employment remuneration contracts are 0. So I'm assuming that's now a choice not to disclose it, because I'm assuming you have more of them. Okay. And that's me done. Yeah, no, good set of financials. Nothing to worry us them. So I think Councillor Roundtree, if you're happy now to put that motion forward. Yes, so that's the recommendation as seen on your agenda. Would someone like to second that? Sorry, Councillor Taylor. All those in favour? And that's carried. Thank you again, David. We'll let you get back to work.
Thank you everyone, and appreciate being able to work with you for the last 5 years for those that have been around. But yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Bye.
Okay, so we now will jump back in order of the agenda. So the next item we have is item 5, which is the updated audit and risk program. Does any officer wish to speak against for the report?
Through you, Chair, this is a progression of the program that's been reported to the Audit and Risk Committee and to the Finance Committee on a regular basis over the last 12 months. I don't think there's any new additions to it. I think it's just a matter of making sure the dates are in order.
And I'm happy to move the recommendation.
Is there any questions or comments before that? I do have something, but Councillor Lynn. Sorry?
They appear to meet the timelines from my perspective.
Yeah, okay. I guess from my point of view, just to add that those outstanding issues from the audit, valuations are probably something that do need to be considered. What was the intention of the valuations? When are we expecting to? Yes.
Through you, Chair, I'll ask the director who's looking after that.
Question. So the revaluation of the roads is almost complete.
Okay.
Buildings is all but complete. There's some, I guess, concerns and issues with the building revaluation due to the delay in time between evaluations 2014 to now, 7 years. CWMS and the plant has been done, and CWMS stormwater and water provisions is something yet to be done.
Okay.
Being quite inert assets, they're probably less of a risk at this point in time, and the focus is on the other three major asset categories. The intent is to have them working with our asset management provider. Hopefully before Christmas, we'll have some information, but at this point in time, I wouldn't commit to that, but that's my hope.
What is the possibility of having them? They're not really an approval process. I guess an audit committee determines, has to review a lot of assumptions that councils make in regards to their financial numbers and what's going in their asset management plans. So it's getting some sort of confirmation that unit rates are correct on road construction, that depreciation rates are consistent, those sorts of things. So it is important to bring it to this committee. I guess the question is, where do you see that in the timing? Is it after your asset management plans are done, or do you see that to be beforehand? Or again, don't want to hold up the process, because I hate the idea that, when we're waiting for an audit committee, a council meeting before we can progress things, but when would we be likely to see these sorts of things?
So they're obviously not going to this meeting. I would like to have them for the next audit committee meeting, which will then inform our budget process for 22-23.
We have a meeting in January, is that,
Is it January? Yeah. February.
Okay, all right. So I guess, can we just get that, bring the valuations into the work plan? The other thing, just in regards to the work plan, there is some really good best practice work plans of audit committees to make sure we tick off everything, because there are a few things not here, but also we're only seeing the latter half of the year. So, but it's good to make sure we keep that full checklist to see what we've already covered and what we've got, to do. So I'd maybe have a look. I know a couple that I do like, off the Port Perry this afternoon, they have a really good checklist. And I think Wakefield Council have a good checklist. Look at this. Yep. And finally, I do notice though on this list, we're not seeing a lot. There's nothing in regards to risk register or a review of council strategic risks. Remind me if we've already seen it.
No, but we can put that into the plan as well.
Yeah, I think if we make sure that we're doing a review of that once a year, that would also be good. So if we can do that in the latter part of the year, making sure that councils review that. So I guess I'm going to just suggest a quick change here, that the Audit and Risk Committee recommend that council adopt the updated audit and risk work program with the inclusion of asset revaluations and the review of council strategic risks and risk register. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Yep. I can move that if you wish, but I'm happy for another member to move that. Thank you, Councillor Roundtree. Would someone like to second that? Thank you, Councillor Hill. All those in favour? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay. So item 6 on the agenda is the Chief Executive Officer's credit card report. We have a recommendation that the Audit and Risk Committee receive and note the Chief Executive Officer's credit card report for the period from May to October. Any questions or comments? All right, would someone like to move that? Thank you, Councillor Hill, seconded by Councillor Roundtree. All those in favour? That's carried. Again, thank you. Okay. Now to the meaty part of the agenda, even though the financial statement's pretty meaty, I must admit. Item 7. Oh no, sorry, not there yet. Got ahead of myself. Oh no, it is, sorry. 21-22, item 7, annual business plan and budget and long-term financial plan update. We have a recommendation that the Audit and Risk Committee review and note the draft long-term financial plan. Okay, my understanding is all members have already seen this document in workshops and meetings. Any questions, comments in regards to it? Or actually, is there an officer want to speak to this before? Or are you happy that?
Just quickly, I suppose, to recognise that this is a big body of work, that it was a significant change from the previous one in terms of the detail involved and the staff members' ability to look at individual issues within the long-term financial plan. The graphs there, I think, are instructive. We know that there's a lot more work to be done, particularly with the asset revaluations, but this is the starting point, I think, and will serve us well once we have the triggers of the asset management plans and also then the growth plan. So there will be triggers that we will look at and take the opportunity to continually review.
Okay, now, Councillor Roundtree, did you have a question? I thought I saw your hand up. Oh, okay. Any questions, comments? Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I was going to move the motion because we've already seen.
Okay, I do have a few questions.
Yeah, but that's right. I'm going to.
I know you've all seen that, but
yeah.
So if no one else has any questions, my first, I guess, statement is to say congratulations to the council to have a good, robust document, which I don't think you've had. Well, since I've been here and probably previously, I know it's been very high level. It's probably been a tick and flick more to get you through the statutory obligations that you do have. Whereas I think, you know, by the sounds of it, the amount of detail that you've all gone into, I hope the councillors have had a really good learning experience to understand about all of this and make sure everything is in that document. So staff need to be congratulated. I think you've been really lucky getting James. He's done a good job, very robust document. I hammered him on the assumptions and he just kept reeling off the answers, so he knows the document really well. So yeah, a couple of things I did raise, and I believe some of it may have been communicated. I guess just the format of the document generally, it's very intensively an organisation document, not a community document yet. So I think, you know, when you put it into community terms at the high level, it'll be great. But I think it's the format you've got for council is very good because it does give you the detail that you need to understand to make good decisions. So that's good to see. I guess what I'd always say is it has assumptions in regards to rate revenue, and the pitfall that councils often fall into is when they have ongoing deficits and they need to get out of them, they create a long-term financial plan with a rate level that gets them out. But every year when they go to their budget decision making, they don't stick to those long-term financial plans and they come in lower, and so suddenly the deficits actually are still there because they're not willing to follow that through. I must admit, I had a chat with the LGFA yesterday, and they are really going to start hammering home in making sure there are some really good long-term financial plans and asset management plans before they will be lending anyone money. And I've actually got a training session with them tomorrow, Friday, just sitting down with their staff, showing them everything about long-term financial plans, what to look for. Sometimes people do to make them look good when maybe they're not, all those sorts of things. So they're really seeing this as a way forward to make sure they're making informed decisions before they start lending money. So this document, that's good that you've got that in place. The other concern, I guess, we do have, this is very much business as usual at the moment. And we know you've got a long way to go in regards to asset management plans and valuations. So if there are some big numbers coming out of those, you're going to It's not your council. I'm sure she'll be back in about 5 seconds. So
Yeah.
got it. I guess you don't have your asset management plans in place. If there's some big numbers that come in, this may change your long-term financial plan drastically, and that's what happens. I guess what I'd also stress is with asset management plans is a lot of councils are putting asset management plans forward that aren't affordable. They're putting their wish list asset management plans forward, and we're saying don't do that. You need to analyse it for affordability with your long-term financial plan and bring them together on a coordinated basis so that you're reporting to the community an affordable asset management plan that then feeds into your long-term financial plan. And I can see James, yeah, you can go.
I just want to point out that the long-term financial plan that we've proposed looks at renewable ratios, and we want to fund it at around about 99.6% at the moment.
Of depreciation. Of depreciation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It also is a living document. We'll be doing BR1, which will change the long-term financial plan year one considerably, given that we had a much better financial result in 2021 than what we were expecting. So obviously we're going to load that in as year zero. Year one will be the budget review, and especially in relation to unspent grants. We're going to have a lot of change in unspent grant income because the Australian accounting standards made us put the previous unspent grants that we've declared as revenue from Dear Dot.
Yep.
We now have to put that into prepaid income. We'll deliver those unspent grants hopefully in fully in the plan over the next 12 months. And hopefully we'll have a zero prepaid grants. That's the intention. So our expenses in capital expenditure are going to go up substantially. The other thing I want to point out about the long-term financial plan, when I looked at it going back 5 years, this council has spent a lot on new assets at the expense of existing assets, which is fine. But the long-term financial plan has put a base of $750,000 a year for capital expenditure on new assets with a $500,000 external fund. So $250,000 a year from council to fund new assets. I think that's important because when you look at our annual result in the 2021 accounts, our asset renewal ratio is only 55%. So we need to pick that up. It was 93 and 99 prior years. I don't know how the classification of that worked. I doubt whether those numbers were right. I'm just pointing out that in the long-term financial plan, we're trying to get back to full renewal ratio. Matt's working very hard in delivering asset management plans, and he's also working hard on bringing out the truth, and that's the hardest part.
No, and I guess to add to that, you have a robust asset long-term financial plan as a starting point. The next big thing will be asset management plans that then need to be fed in. Then that the long-term financial plan will have to be adjusted again to allow for that, to understand what's happening with cash flows. And given that it's been a long time between for valuations, there may be some really big hits on your cash. So be ready that, you know, if it's beneficial to your community, you may have to borrow. Get rid of your cash surpluses, use those up first, but there may be a requirement to borrow. And don't feel, I guess, borrowing is not bad. It allows you to create generational equity. So use it if you need to. I guess the other thing I did say is, I'm trying to figure out what I was talking about. There's a couple of issues. Just I noticed that the ratios in the document need to be the same as those in the model financial statements. So I'm not sure if there were net financial liability ratio in there. So you will need to do that. A lot of councils will just put the graphs in. That doesn't fill the obligation. They must be in the format of the model financial statements showing, you know, the denominator and numerator, not just the graph. So that was missing it. And just sort of saying, when you do create the community document, think about your key summary information at the beginning, being, you know, what are your rate increases are going to be? What are your financial indicators going to be? And I think given you don't have an asset management plan yet, what's the timing? Are you assuming that will be in play by the time you go to the community with your asset management plan? No. So if you're going to approve this long-term financial plan, I would be communicating to the community that, you know, within the next 12 months, you're going to be coming back again once you get more information about your asset management plans. And if you can possibly have an idea of what's likely to happen, it would probably be better to start the conversation, because I know of many councils that, you know, then suddenly you take massive hits. You've really got to be careful. Just a question as well on specifics for the officer. So on page 6 of the long-term financial plan, it says assumption rates and associated service charges will increase by 2.5% CPI plus a growth factor of 0.5. And then I think on page 11, rates and services charge, it says, first paragraph, it is proposed that an average rate income be increased by CPI plus 1% growth throughout the plan.
Pages.
So there's just inconsistency there. So if you can just check through. My understanding is we are talking about CPI of what?
2.4, 2.5.
2.5 and a growth of 0.5. So what is often good in this with your assumptions, actually put 10 periods, 2.2, you know, and put.
Yeah, I've got that in the key indicators as we go across.
Yeah. So that was, yeah.
CPI for the next 10 years.
So there's that's on a few pages, so just make sure that's corrected. Okay, so I note here, what's the timing going forward then? Audit committee are looking through it. Is council going to be approving it today? Okay, so can I suggest that our motion is that we review and we note and recommend to council the adoption of the long-term financial plan?
Oh, sorry, it's not. No, sorry, it's next week's special meeting.
That's okay, but whenever,
Yeah.
I just say we should have in the words that we do recommend it to council for adoption. Yeah.
Special council meeting next 23rd.
Sorry.
Okay. I mean, sometimes we do add things to these motions, such as that we see that the council is moving towards financial sustainability. So I actually think if we do look at that surplus deficit, I get it, if James would like to remind me, you're in balance position pretty much. So you only have a deficit for one, I think 23, is that? So yeah, so what have we got? And recommends the council adopt the long-term financial, actually, I think we'll just leave it now. Maybe kind of stay away from that comment in regards to financial sustainability, because it'll take the asset management plans really to determine that. And so, yeah, I'll just stress again, we'll be looking forward to them coming on board as soon as possible. So would someone like to move that? Councillor Bland, thank you. Seconded. Councillor Roundtree, thank you. All those in favour? And that's carried. Again, congratulations to council to get that document going. It's really good to see. Okay. Now we move to page 8, internal audit process update. The recommendation is that the Audit and Risk Committee receive and note the report. Any questions or comments? Anything from officers in regards to the report?
So again, through you, Chair, the report, there was no surprises. It was things that we've been working on for the last 12 to 18 months. And slowly and surely we're getting there with a couple of them. So in a sense, it validated the work that we've been doing in the last 12 months.
Okay. I guess from my point of view, I always ask that we get reports back to the audit committee in regards to progress. So really, every outstanding item, if we can have it at every meeting until they're gone, it's more just to keep everyone kind of, so we don't forget about them when they appear in the audit committee agenda. We suddenly go and do stuff about them. Only because I've been through it myself, so I know that. So I guess I would like to add to that recommendation as well. Sorry, that the motion is that the Audit and Risk Committee receive and note the report and request for updates on the completion of all outstanding items. Just a regular updates, probably. Yep. Okay, does anyone want to move that motion? Councillor Hill, thank you. Councillor Taylor seconded. All those in favour? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, next item is the external audit process update. The recommendation is the Audit and Risk Committee receive and note the report. Is there any other information from officers in regards to this item? No. The question I do ask at the moment, the legislation states that if they change audit partners, you can still stay with the same audit firm. The current regulations out for response at the moment says that, well, that we know the legislation will change, that you can't do that anymore. If you're a firm with many auditors, you have to change firms and have the next 5 years with another firm. However, the timing of that is still not in play. So depending on your timing, if you wish, you may still want to use the old parts of the legislation, go with the same auditor, they will change partners. So you may request that they tender. So what were you doing? Were you planning on getting Bentley's to put an option in?
Yeah, I would expect that we would invite them.
Okay, right. Just to say, I personally don't. I like to change firms. I find get a new firm and get a new, more than a partner, but I know councils that do. So I'm not completely against it. I just, so that's
But
really
it's
up to
just
the
really
council.
Just having a good selection in the tender process.
Yeah. It is hard in South Australia. It's not a lot. And also just for councillors, you must realise when you do have a changeover of staff, having a changeover of auditors and staff can actually be quite hard because no one can find anything. So often the auditors can help because they know where they got it from last year. So I know, as you kind of moved on, it might be of assistance. So the timing there at the moment, just can I confirm, Audit and Risk Committee meeting is going to happen on the 18th of January?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. And also just to note, there's a council meeting following that.
That's cool. All right, we look forward to seeing the report. I'm just trying to think. Sometimes it is communicated in regards to waiting in tenders and how you're going to put that to the audit committee of how you think you should be weighting the tender approval process. So yeah, that might be something if you.
That would be.
Cool. All right, thank you. Okay, so that is, would someone like to move that the report be received and noted? Thank you, Councillor Bland, seconded by Councillor Taylor. All those in favour? Carried, thank you. All right, so item 10 we have already covered earlier on in the agenda. We'll move to item 11, staff annual and long service leave entitlements. And the recommendation is that the Audit and Risk Committee receive and note the report. Is there an officer that wants to speak to the report?
Through you, Chair. This is an area where we've been working on consistently. We know that we have some vulnerabilities in this area. I suppose it's about working with staff and putting in place mechanisms, and we talked about this at the Finance and Audit Finance Committee as well. There are some strategies in place. We know that COVID actually stymied people's leave, and now we're in a position of ensuring that staff have the appropriate leave. I agree completely with David Pappas that it is a staff welfare as well as a financial issue. We're one of those organisations that the size is that we are just either too small or too big for something, so we don't have backup in a lot of places. So staff feel an obligation to stay, but we're also looking at what succession planning is and how we spread that workload when they do have leave. So certainly actively being worked on with all managers.
Any questions, comments? Any other statements? Okay, yeah, I'm seeing this across every council, same situation. So, but yeah, it's good to see that you're working on it. Would someone like to move the motion that the Audit and Risk Committee receive and note the report? Councillor Roundtree, thank you. Seconded. Councillor Hill, thank you. All those in favour? And that's carried. Councillor Taylor, is that a scone? You're lucky. Cream, jam?
She's not telling.
Not saying.
Okay, next meeting will be held at Councillor Taylor's house. Okay. Item 12 on the agenda is Community Wastewater Management Scheme Reserves. The recommendation is that the Audit and Risk Committee receive a note update on the CWMS reserves. Does anyone, would officer like to speak to the report?
No, I think it's upset.
Any questions or comments from members? Okay, just quickly, my questions. In regards to the amount being transferred out, does council consider risk and cost of capital when they've calculated that? So is the amount, the cost of capital coming out of going into the reserve or going out to the organisation?
In this case, when you add up the operating expenditure and the capital expenditure, the revenue from ratepayers exceeded both.
A cost of capital, not capital expenditure, the interest on the capital you've invested in the CWMS scheme. All right. The reason I say that is reserves, CWMS reserves are notorious everywhere in regards to what's going in and out of them. There is a paper by the LGA in regards to CWMS, and it does cover what should go in and out of reserves. It comes down to pricing. There is a confusion between reserves. Asset maintenance, asset replacement reserves really should be taking depreciation. Asset sort of CWMS pricing issues are another question. Are we over or undercharging? And so they should, be reflected back in future charges. If you've overcharged, then you don't have to increase prices as much. But asset replacement reserves, nothing is different. So really consider what you're putting in the reserve. Because I think councils do get in trouble with this. If you look at the CWMS paper from the LGA, cost of capital is really important. And it's the money the council is invested in CWMS, so it actually goes back to the council. Doesn't get carried away into a reserve. And also think about your risk factor. So when you set pricing for CWMS, you're supposed to have a factor for risk. Also consider where that should be going. I would say generally risk is better to stay in the reserve because risk is about future problems and how we can pay for that. So again, it's probably good that there is a policy or a procedure in place of what exactly goes in that reserve, because everyone will change their mind every year and you'll never get a consistency. So I'm happy to just receive and note that report, but I guess going forward, I would see an expectation. When was the last time you did pricing on your CWMS reserve? Like to set CWMS?
Dolphins did some at the beginning of last year.
Okay, yeah. And so you're following their pricing and for full cost recovery. Okay. Then it is really important that you start considering what's going in that reserve, because they would have talked about cost of capital and risk in their report. So yeah, and it may require you to do a bit of analysis back historically to see if you've appropriately covered the reserve.
Thank you.
Okay, would someone like to move a motion to receive and note that report? No one? Oh, sorry, Councillor Roundtree, thank you. Sorry, I couldn't see on the screen. Seconded by Councillor Taylor, thank you. All those in favour? And that's carried, thank you. Item Item 13, we have already covered. Okay, item 14, work health and safety report. And the recommendation here is that the Audit and Risk Committee receive and note the report. Is there an officer that wishes to talk to this report?
Through you, Chair, I'll just ask if Rob has anything to say. No? Thank you.
Any questions, comments from members? Yep, go.
Sorry, I did want to make a comment. I think that the level of reporting from staff is improving. Sometimes we look at these reports and we think that the issue may not be of huge significance, but for me, it's more about the reporting of the issue rather than the size or the materiality of the issue involved. It's really, we're at a point where staff are starting to think about OH&S in a way that probably is different to what they did in the past. And it's about making sure that the reporting mechanisms are in place so that when we do have, and it's always a matter of when, not if, we do have a major incident, then we have the right reporting mechanisms in place.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Generally, from a reporting perspective, do we report on the actions taken to reduce the risk of future incidents and for the exact items? I guess when I see things like chlorine dosage, line length, valve not turned off, yeah, just are there sort of actions put in play or?
Through you, Chair, that's the next stage of our reporting. We haven't got to that stage. We actually do it and we have a discussion about it at every SLT meeting.
Yeah.
But the reporting mechanism's not there yet.
Okay. Have we at this committee seen your process of how you do handle these? Like I said, I don't believe in getting in the nitty gritty of how you're dealing with actions. It's just confirming that your process in place. I'm assuming it's part of your policy. Yeah. Or
it is a policy. We do have structures and frameworks in place.
Yeah.
To be honest, I can't remember whether it's come to this committee or not.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Through our online system,
Rob, you need to talk to the microphone so that,
Sorry, Rob.
so that the people
Join us.
Here. No, it's off. Rob, turn it back. Yep. Red is.
That's it.
So through our online system, SkyTrust, we have reporting mechanisms. So for an incident or hazard or whatever, so our staff will report on those. So then that goes to their manager and the manager is responsible for investigating that. And that could be through talking to the people or team. And then actions are put in the system and given to an officer to action. So at team meetings and that will actually report on those actions outstanding or whatever. So, and then at SLT will report, well, last month we had 10 all closed or 5 open. So, yeah.
Okay. I guess if you do have that and that's all reported in SkyTrust, that might be not every meeting, but there is some sort of reporting back to the audit committee of, you know, outstanding actions and those sorts of things, whether it's a 6-monthly or annual basis.
It could be annual,
yeah,
which is also a reflection for the year. Go on.
Yep. No, that's a good idea. So that, yeah, like again, I don't like seeing the detail. It's just making sure that there are processes in place and things are being followed up. Would someone like to move that the Audit and Risk Committee receive and note the work health and safety report? Thank you, Councillor Bland, seconded by Councillor Hill. All those in favour? And that's carried. Thank you. Item 15 on the agenda is fire prevention. Again, the Audit and Risk Committee receive and note the report. Does an officer wish to talk to this item?
This is a standing process for the council every year, and I suspect for most councils across South Australia. It's really just to highlight to the Audit and Risk Committee that it's part of our work schedule.
Any questions or comments? This is probably getting into the detail of the Audit and Risk Committee. Probably don't need to see. Again, if we're reviewing your strategic risks, it's more about knowing that if this is a high level risk, what's a strategic risk, or a high level operational risk, then what are you doing about it? Thank you very much for the information. I like that sort of stuff anyway, but yeah, I hate it when I'm seeing someone having to write a report that they probably don't need to. So I'd suggest that for next time. I haven't asked if no one's moved that yet. No, I'm just checking, talking too much. Would someone like to move that? Councillor Roundtree, thank you. Seconded. Councillor Bland, thank you. All those in favour? That's carried, thank you. Okay, now for something a bit more exciting. Item 16, the Information Technology Report. And again, the recommendation here is that the Audit and Risk Committee receive and note the report. Would an officer like to speak to this item?
Through you, Chair, this is a area where there was considerable risk to the organisation. Not only we were doing one IT upgrade, we were doing two. We were changing our IT provider and also buying a new system at the same time. And there were time requirements, but there's also risk in terms of if IT fails either in either of those, then the risk to the organisation is quite high. We have been working through the process for both changeovers, and the migration for the IT provider has almost complete, and the migration to the new business system is in process with moving into the testing phase with 1st of February go live. So although it's been a lot of work and a few sleepless nights for a couple of people in the room, it is going to plan, and we are expecting to cross over on the 1st of February. We've already done the payroll and we've been running two systems now. I think this is a third payroll coming up. And so things are on track.
Any questions, comments?
I'd probably like to make a comment pretty similar. I think that there's a huge task getting the system swapped over. And I'm really pleased that the mess we had before is sort of being remedied now, and I'm really looking forward to having easy and accurate reports in the future. And I think it's been a long time coming, but very, very pleased with how well everyone's doing, and the efforts involved in swapping things over from one system to another system is just huge. And so I just really appreciate the staff's time and Bridget for getting this underway. Very happy.
Anyone else? I'll add to that. For an organisation to be doing long-term financial plans and asset management plans and a system implementation is quite a big, lot of tasks, some major items within an organisation. It's unfortunate, I guess, how timings happen, and I know when you have outdated software and you are sort of forced to go, but yes, hopefully we do see an improvement in the reporting and allows managers to manage their business and councillors to see what's happening in regards to those financial information, and then everyone can get their work done easily by having some good IT in place. So I guess a big thank you to staff. I'm sure they're working quite hard to make sure they can deliver on all these expectations. But yeah, just so that councillors realise this is a pretty big undertaking that your staff are doing at the moment. There's a very big workload there. So yeah.
It sort of answers the question about excess leave, really.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, I don't like the next couple of months. I guess the question I only have, I know I've been through a couple of these implementations, is are staff getting the time to spend with the new system? Are they getting time away from their jobs so they get to train and they get to understand ready for implementation?
Yeah. So the key staff, and again, most of the modules are finance modules, most of them, but also payroll as well. They're getting one-on-one sessions with IT Vision staff, and because we devoted essentially November and December to that, we believe there is adequate time. And plus also, in addition, there are at least half a dozen people who are very familiar with Synergysoft, and we're getting those people into the play space to refresh their familiarity with the system, including myself. So we'll essentially become the extra support go live.
That's good. Okay. All right, would someone like to move that the Audit and Risk Committee receive and note the report for the IT project? Thank you, Councillor Hill. Seconded by Councillor Roundtree. All those in favour? And that's carried. Thank you. Item 17 on the agenda. Oh my gosh, we have got through 17 items and it's only 30. Talk too much. Again. Item 17 is the Disability Access and Inclusion Plan, and the recommendation is the Audit and Risk Committee receive and note the report. Does an officer wish to talk to the report?
This is a legislative requirement that we do the reporting in this fashion, and this is compliance with that. Having said that, it's also now front and centre of how we do things if we have to retrofit or if we're doing something that's a change to one of our assets. We take a heed what's in this plan. Not always easy because generally it's costly modifications and retrofitting, but it's something that we need to do.
Any questions or comments?
Only question would be, and that is around the disability. Spoken with employment opportunities when the opportunity comes up, disability services.
Through you, Chair, I can't answer that directly. Councillor Bland, are you thinking of a particular incident?
No, it's just about informing local disability employment service providers when we have opportunity for employment. Have we actually put that into our processes yet?
No.
I wasn't aware whether we had or not. So.
No.
So it's still in an action to happen. Thanks.
And I guess a question from an asset management point of view is that we've kind of incorporated that in the buildings AMP.
We just started a building audit process against disability access, and we started obviously with our main buildings, this building and Meningi's offices, and we'll work through a program, and that also then will be reflected in the building asset management plans and our business plans.
Okay, would someone like to move that report will be received and noted? Thank you, Councillor Bland. Seconded. Thank you, Councillor Taylor. All those in favour? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, final report, number 8, item 18 on the agenda is the local government reforms update. Again, this is that the Audit and Risk Committee received the local government reforms update report. And does an officer wish to speak to the report?
It's really, I suppose, to flag with the Audit and Risk Committee that it's on our work schedule along with everything else, and we're aware of the requirements and are actively ensuring that we respond to whatever reform requires us to do.
I guess someone just remind this list at the moment is really just that first wave of reforms. We do have out for consultation a number of regulations that will also, and they don't have a date for implementation yet. That'll occur. So we'll be seeing that soon as well. Any questions or comments? All right. Just added to that, one of the reforms that's coming forward that is in the regs at the moment, but it's due to have an implementation, is the structure of audit and risk committees. There will be a requirement to have a majority of independent members. Like I said, there's no implementation date. Now, I did have a discussion with your CEO today about that. I think our current structure, I personally find it quite hard as the chair and the only independent member. So going to that format, I think will be great. So my understanding is council will be looking at the terms of reference, and the audit committee will be looking at the terms of reference, and we may look at implementing that sooner than later, given that it's probably due, for this council to move forward with their independent membership, and then sort of going. So that will, the majority therefore will also change the structure of the number of councillors as well. So just something to consider going forward, that change will be taken, but we'll all get an opportunity to see that report and have some discussions about that.
Through you, Chair, it's probably one of those things where do you go a little bit earlier than the mass of councils? Because if we're looking for independent members, if we're a little bit early in the process, I'm not suggesting we won't get a good body of candidates, but we might get a good body of candidates that we may not get if every council in the state is looking to transfer at the same time. So it's just something we might think about.
Okay. So just in regards to item 18, would someone like to move that recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Hill. Seconded by Councillor Roundtree. Thank you. All those in favour? And that's carried. Thank you. All right. Before I close the meeting, just a quick discussion on the next meeting. That date is actually the 18th of January that we'll be looking at, sort of outside of the normal timing to consider
The appointment of the auditor.
the appointment of the auditor. So remember from that previous report, we'll have that meeting. Okay. Anything else that members wish to bring up? Nope. Well, thank you everyone for your time and diligence. That was surprising because it's quite a long agenda, but we've got through it. Again, you know, you do have a different process here because I think a number of you have already seen, or all of you have seen everything. So that sort of saves us a bit of time. But thank you for your attendance and we will see you all on the 18th. So I'll close the meeting at 1:36. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. Thank you, councillors. We'll turn you off now.
Oh, behave.